Thank you for joining us again. I am your host, Micaiah Young, here on Victory Vision Podcast, and wanted to say thank you so much for tuning in and so excited to jump in. As you hear that the audio is still a little wonky, we have not gone back to all the podcast stuff yet. We've been moving upstairs, just different rooms, different buildings, and I'm still out of breath from it. Those of you who have walked upstairs, that's you feel like you should have abs by the time you get done. It feels like that you've worked out that much, but so we're still using my iPhone for the audio, so hopefully you can hear it well. And we're excited to jump back in this, and thank you so much for tuning in. But I wanted to start a series today on how to handle adversity, And that is something that I believe that all of us face and all of us deal with as far as life goes. And that's the majority of life of things that we face. And I was turning my Bible here to Job chapter number 14, a very popular verse, a very famous verse that says in Job 14:1 that man is born of a woman, or man that is born of a woman is of few days and full of trouble. That's the qualification for dealing with adversity, dealing with trouble in your life, is that you're born of a woman. Now, I know in 2024, it's hard to know what a woman is or a man is or anything like that. But, you know, Job says that man that is born of a woman, you're going to face trouble in this life. You're going to deal with things that come against you, adversities and different trials and tribulations and different struggles. And in Job chapter number 5, in verse number 6 and onward, Job likens trouble to dust. You know, those of you who clean your house, you wipe off the dust, and then next thing you know, the next day you go back and the dust is in the same place. And you're like, I literally just cleaned that, and now the dust is back. And that's the way that trouble is described. That's the way that Job describes trouble, that as soon as you get rid of one trouble, there's another trouble that comes around the corner. And so that's something that we all face. And I know that we're going to get into different reactions to trouble throughout the Bible. We're going to go through a series on how to handle adversity. And I know that we have different views when it comes to trouble. And I know trials and consequences, different things come into our lives for multiple different reasons. I know some are consequences for sin. Some are God's trying to mold us. There is sometimes things just happen by chance, honestly. Ecclesiastes chapter number 9, verse number 11 says that the troubles that we have in this life, sometimes they happen to us by chance. And so sometimes things just happen because, you know, we're born of a few days, but full of trouble those few days that we're here on this earth. And so sometimes things just happen by chance. And sometimes there is a reason for it, but we can't always get caught up in, you know, of thinking critically about everything that goes on in our life. You know, John chapter number 9, some people, we all react differently to trouble, but a lot of times we can be very critical, or we tend to overthink, or we tend to get anxious when trouble comes into our life. And what do you mean by that, Micaiah? Well, sometimes we look at troubles in our life and we say, why? Sometimes we look at our trouble and say, what did I do to deserve this? What did I do to bring this into my life? And I remember there was a lady one time, she had lived years and years of sin and different things, different struggles. And she had gotten away from that, asked for forgiveness from God, started living right. And then she had a child go into the hospital, and she said, oh, it must have been because of me. You know, from all those things I did years ago, and instantly put the blame on herself and started worrying and started stressing and all these different things. And a lot of times we can think and we automatically add our opinion to the fact. We see troubles in our life, and I've said this so many times before, but it's so true. Life is not what happens to you, but how you react to what happens to you. And oftentimes we react to trouble and we automatically add reasons behind that trouble when there may not be a reason at all. Okay, yes, it may be because of you, but it also may not be because of you. It could be God, but it may not be God. You know, we always add our opinions to the fact, and then we stress about it so much. And instead of just seeking, okay, we're just going to please God, and I know these troubles, they're gonna pass. This too shall pass, and I'm going to learn from whatever has come into my life. And you know, in John chapter number 9, you had that person that was coming to Jesus needing to be healed, and the Pharisee said, "Who sinned, this man or his parents?" They automatically assume the trouble that they had is because of a person, is because of a consequence of something, when in reality, he didn't do anything at all. He just had troubles. You have Job, who didn't do anything at all, but he had troubles. And sometimes things just happen. I know when you look at Genesis chapter number 12, people that are even in the will of God face troubles. Genesis chapter number 12, Abraham is told to go to another land. And what does Abraham do? In Genesis chapter number 12, here, let me turn to it right quick. Genesis chapter number 12, when you look at it, he is literally complimenting Abraham and just telling him all these great things. Genesis chapter number 12, it says, "Now the Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house into a land that I will show thee. And I will make thee a great nation." Man, this is sounding great already. "I will bless thee, make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. I will bless them that bless thee, and curse them that curseth thee. And in thee all thy families of the earth shall be blessed." So Abraham departed. So it says that he obeyed God and he went to where God would have him to go. But then you see in verse number 10, "And there was a famine in the land." You see that Abraham was literally in the very will of God. He had obeyed what God told him to do. But what did he face? He faced trouble. And you know what we do? We say, "What did I do?" Or, "God, why?" Or, "Why does this happen? And why does that happen?" And when in reality, trouble just happens. And sometimes that's all that it is. "God, why did I have this flat tire? I must not have tithed." Whatever. You really think because you tithe that God needs your money, that he's going to blow out your tire because you didn't give. But this is the mindset that we tend to have, is we think God's trying to get us back because we didn't. God is not. We have the wrong mentality of God. We believe that God is waiting up there with weapons of warfare, waiting to rain down fire on us because we made a mistake. When in reality, God, he has positive thoughts towards us. He wants us to succeed, and sometimes he does have to chastise us, and we're going to get into all the reasons that trouble may happen, but sometimes that's the thing I want to get across today. The qualification for troubles and adversities in our life is merely being alive. But you know what the blessing is? There's people out in the world that deal with troubles, but we have the very God of heaven that says he will never leave us nor forsake us. And we have him walking through the storm with us. And I know sometimes we can be like the disciples and say, "Carest thou not that we perish?" While Jesus is asleep, we think that Jesus, and I'm going to go through that as well, God's silent sometimes. We think that God doesn't care while we're going through some things, but indeed he does. And we should never, like the disciples did, question his character, thinking, "Do you even care that we perish?" I promise you he cares, but there's a lot of different reasons and the perspective we should have during adversity. And so that's what I wanted to talk about today, is the qualifications of adversity. I want to talk about how to handle adversity and go through this, because this is something that I deal with. This is something everyone deals with, because we all face troubles. We all face adversity. And I just want to, just like all of you, get through these things, because there's coming a day where we don't have any more troubles. There's coming a day where we won't have any more trials. But right now, we have to have a right view of troubles, a right view of adversity, and allow it to mold us into what God would have us to be, and allow us to become a person that can reach other people as well. And so that's what I want to talk about today, the qualifications for adversity. Not only because bad things happen, it's not always because you did something. It's because trouble is like dust. The moment you get rid of one trouble, it pops back up. But don't be so critical the moment trouble comes into your life. Think about it. Jesus in Matthew chapter number 3, verse 16, Jesus had just gotten through. God just told him, "You're my son in whom I am well pleased." And then he's in 40 days, he is fasting and faced adversity because of the devil. Was Jesus out of the will of God? Had Jesus done anything to deserve any of that? No. Did Jesus do anything to deserve being nailed to a cross? No. Did Jesus deserve to be spit on and to his beard to be ripped out, or for people to talk bad about him? No. But because he was born of a woman, he had faced trouble. When you look at Hebrews chapter number 11, fascinating. We know it as the Hall of Faith, But something that we don't realize is towards the end of Hebrews chapter number 11, I'm turning to it right quick. Give me a little time. Fascinating stuff. Fascinating. Hebrews 11, towards the end of the chapter, we normally never talk about the end, but it says, verse number 33, talking about prophets, all these different people who through faith subdued kingdoms, wrought righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lying. Man, this is amazing. Quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, waxed valiant in fight, turned to flight the armies of the aliens. Women received their dead raised to life again, and others, now that was a distinction that was made. Some of these people had some great victories serving God. But watch the distinction that's made in verse number 35. And others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they might obtain a better resurrection. So people that going through these things obtain a better resurrection. And others had a trial of cruel mockings and scourgings, yea, moreover of bonds and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn asunder, they were tempted, were slain with the sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts and in mountains and in dens and in caves of the earth. And these all, so talking about the people who have done great things for God, and then it talks about the people who were serving God but faced trials. These all having obtained a good report through faith. So those people that had trials, there's people that went through things, but it wasn't because they did anything wrong. But it says these all, a good report through faith, received not the promise. You see, there's people that have done amazing things for God and don't face maybe some of the things that other people face, but just because these other people faced it, they faced a lot of trouble, did not mean that there was anything wrong. They were in the perfect will of God, and sometimes trouble just happens. And so I just wanted to share that with you today, that don't get so anxious when things come into your life, troubles and adversity. Get a positive perspective. We're going to get into that. But get a positive perspective of adversity and just look at it as in, man, trouble just happens, but I'm going to make the best of it. I'm going to allow this to mold me, and I'm going to allow this to make me become a great thing throughout all of this. So thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to be continuing our series next week. Hopefully we'll have the camera, the audio, all that stuff back set up, but hopefully this was a help to you, and then just getting a right view of adversity, and not all of it happens for a reason.